Welcome back to the Women Unleashed podcast. I'm your co host, Britt, and Taylor is your co host as well. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Paul Berry. He is a performance consultant and an executive business coach. And before I continue to introduce him, I want to let you know today that this year we are changing tacks a little bit because previously Taylor and we talk, we upload 2 episodes a month and every fortnight. And we found that we are going to give you more and more variety, more culture, context, juiciness, difference by actually having special guests on our podcast each month. So you can expect one episode from Taylor and I just together, and then the other episode will have a special guest. So Paul Berry is a former Landmark Forum leader. I'm really moved to have you on our podcast. You've made a big difference to over 100,000 people by leading the forum over 19 years. And when this opportunity arose to invite you on our podcast, I jumped at it. It took a leap. And I am really pleased that you're here with us today. And it's very fitting to have you here at the start of 2025. There are a lot of people that are going to be pondering what is this, how do they want to create their year? And you are one of those perfect people to have a kind of conversation like that with us. So thank you very much for being here.
Yes. Well, first of all, Brett and Taylor, thank you very much for inviting me on. And I'm really thrilled to be here. And I'm very flattered that I'm a special guest. But I think the thing is, what I would like this to be in terms of special is the difference it can make to both of you and people listening, because my life is really about contribution to people. It has been for a significant part of my life, and that's really my intention, that this be valuable for people.
I have no doubt it will be, Paul. And when I listened to the previous podcast that you did do, I left that I was in tears. I was just so moved by who you are in the world. And that is, you give that to people. You give that in whatever area of their life they're looking for. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Amazing. Great.
All right. Well, the first question we had was, why did you become a forum leader, and what do forum leaders do? So let's start with that, and then we can move forward to the present and what you're up to.
So why did I become a forum leader? Well, I'll give you a little bit of backstory, if I may, so it creates a kind of context. So I'm the eldest of three. I have a younger brother who's 14 months younger than me, and a sister that's 5 years younger than me. And, my dad and mum separated when I was 11. So my brother was 10 and my sister was 6. And I remember them sitting us down to say they were separating, but it didn't really kind of resonate or have any kind of stock to it. It was just like an inform. And my mum said to me afterwards, she said, "Any questions you have?" And I said, "Can I go and play on my bike now?"
Yeah.
Right. And I think if I look back, a lot of it was because my dad, was such a great dad, and my mum was a great mum. And while my mum wasn't going to be there, the kind of duality of both of what they provided for the family didn't mean, oh my gosh, the best one's gone or the right one's gone, And my grandmother came and lived with us. And, my grandmother was 70. And she took on a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old, 2 of them being boys, right? So anybody that has boys bordering on teenage years can kind of have an appreciation for the demand that is. So I was very, very fortunate to have my grandmother really be the cornerstone. And my dad worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to really provide for us. My grandmother was amazing. She went through the Blitz in London and rationing, and my dad was her only child, and I just adore my grandmother, absolutely adore her. And then my dad wanted the best for us, and we were very fortunately sent away to public schools in the UK, and my sister too. A lot of scholarships involved. My dad was only a London taxi driver, but I never saw him much because he worked a lot. But when I saw him, it was very, very precious to me. And then trigger alert. So, this could be potentially triggering for people, and I don't intend it to be, but I do want to be transparent about my life. That one day my father took his life when I was 19. And it was brutal. And the same for my brother and for my sister. And now all of a sudden I found myself elevated to being, the head of the household at 19. And whoever that boy was, prior to that, wasn't the same person afterwards. I became very determined, very distrustful of people, very, very protective, like super protective of my brother and my sister. And, my grandmother, bless her, she held everything together. And suddenly life was different. And we had a lot of challenges and, different pathways that we all three of us went down. And I kind of was very lost from the age of almost 20 to the age of 33, except, I've been very fortunate in life because I think if there is ever angels, one found its way into my life. And that was a girlfriend that I had, Elodie, who was just beautiful and supportive. Anyway, she did the forum and she came back different. She'd been a little bit quiet and sort of kind of self-conscious before the forum. She came back very confident and very expressive. And it was noticeable to me. And she promised me that if I did the forum, I could be happy again. But the problem was I didn't trust anybody. But there was one thing that I was really missing in my life at 33, which was sharing it with somebody. I'd been very successful, I had a great home, money, all those things, but no one to share it with. So I took a gamble. I took a big risk to trust someone and put myself in the forum. And the moment I did, things started to alter because I had trusted somebody. And just in doing that, it changed the way I saw myself and I saw people. And I did the forum and it was ridiculously powerful for me. I mean, I never talked about my dad for 13 years. And I was able to work on that in the forum and get it what we call complete. Not forgotten, not shoved under the carpet, but it did happen. And all the significance that I'd added around it, like I was a bad son, I shouldn't have gone out that day, and my dad didn't love me. All of that is what I added to it, which I hadn't seen. And I was able to just see it for what it was. And then I had a choice. I can hang on to it if I want. I'm a bad son and my dad didn't love me, or, this is what happened. And as sad as it is, I don't have to add all the significance and brouhaha to it. And I walked out freer than I'd ever been. And I loved people again. And it's still moving to me to this day that I was able to express my love for people. And I saw the forum as being a pathway for people to be able to resolve things very powerfully, very clearly, in a way that they were left able to be brilliant in life. And so the second part of your question is, why did I become a forum leader? Was on that Saturday, I was so profoundly moved by what I saw happening in the room with people from all walks of life, including myself, I remember saying to myself, I want this to be available to people. And I spent the next 5 years in an intense, challenging, rigorous training program until I was at a stage where I was able to then go and lead the forum. And that's really what started the next 19 years of my life.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah.
Just like need a moment. Yeah. It's amazing. And I'm so glad you did, because I know for me, you know, you're our forum leader. And I know for me, you made a massive impact in my life. So I really appreciate that you did that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Really
Well, you're more than welcome. I mean, it's really the acknowledgement is with the people who participate, because they walk into a room with a complete stranger. They have no idea about the training that goes on and the hours of study and everything, and you're just a kind of guy to them, you know, and it can be a pretty challenging guy because people are looking at their life differently. So I'm always in awe of people who put themselves in the forum, the courage and their commitment to not settle for okay.
Yeah, it does take a lot of courage as a participant, and I view you as someone that's extremely courageous to stand up there and hold yourself to such an integrous, like in total integrity, and be that kind of person for people. What, for someone who hasn't done the forum, obviously Taylor and I have, like, how do you describe what a forum leader does? Like, because forum leader can sound a little bit like ominous, or, you know, but as you just said, you're just sort of guy at the front of the room.
Well, for people I am.
Yeah.
You know, so, well, the program is called the Forum, the Landmark Forum. And, you know, I led the Landmark Forum. So that's why you're called a forum leader. So what does a forum leader do? Is that?
Yeah, that was the question.
Yeah. Ultimately, let's see, it could sound a bit corny, but it's not corny really. It's like we all coexist in some way, shape, or form. And we get stuck with certain things about ourselves and about others and about life. And we can be half glass empty rather than half glass full sometimes.
Yeah, like our view of life can be that the glass is half empty.
Yeah. You know, if you think about what's formative in your life is your young years. I mean, you probably get about 4 years where you're just the most authentic to who you are. And then something happens.
Yeah.
And it's never just that something happened, because always what comes next is something about what just happened. Something about you about it.
Yeah.
You know, get embarrassed about something. Suddenly now you're not going to be embarrassed for the rest of your life, except it's so automatic and so quick, a nanosecond, it just becomes part of who you are. You know, so let me see. So what does the forum leader do? So the forum leader leads the forum. The forum is what is extraordinary. A forum leader is a phenomenon. To be able to deliver it appropriate to all the different people in the room and where they all are and their, you know, culture, race, religion, sexual orientation. I mean, you know, so there's an enormous amount of training in the background that allows for the performance in the foreground. And then, you know, you're always looking at your performance after every program and what could you correct, what could you improve, what worked, you know.
Yeah.
So a forum leader is really about delivering the forum and allowing people to see their lives from another perspective, which opens up new opportunities in areas where those opportunities haven't existed. And those opportunities are so compelling and so inspiring and so moving that you are literally called forth into that, and you start being as a human being, and you start acting completely different in those areas where you may have thought it will never be any different. Like it was with me, with my dad. I thought I would always have my head down for the rest of my life and be tainted. And why? You know, that question drove me crazy. And after the forum, I didn't have to worry about the why, because even understanding it wouldn't have made any difference. It still was a reality.
Yeah.
The same, you know, the girlfriend that I really adored and was, you know, infatuated with, who jilted me for another person. And, you know, the same when, you know, I was a smaller guy than the other guys at school. And, you know, so by the time you get to sort of into your teens, you're already kind of in a kind of straitjacket in some way, but we get used to it. So it's about really discovering that and releasing you from that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for, that's really clear now. Like, I really think everyone will get what it is that the forum's about and what you did. So I in the previous podcast, you know, you said you made a difference to thereabouts 100,000 people, which is it's a huge number of people to make a difference to, especially being like you personally in front of them, whether it's on a Zoom screen or in a big room. And when I was thinking about what do I want to know that I think our listeners would benefit from, and that is like, because you've led to so many people and you've heard a lot of their stories and what things that have happened in their life that they have made a meaning of that's not what actually happened. For women in particular, have you observed that there are similar or common stories that women wind up with or land on that you don't generally see with men? Like, is there a few common ones that you've seen, and what are they?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me just take a moment to look. So I think the first thing, Brett and Taylor, we all have things in common, regardless of our sexual orientation or gender. You know,
that's clear. Yep.
Mum, dad, brothers, sisters, you know, things that happen at school, things that happen in relationships, they're kind of common to all of us. I think the thing for me, and it wouldn't be so much said by, you know, a woman or women in the courses, but it was definitely there in the background, is the struggle for their voice to be heard in the same way as a man.
Okay.
I mean, we hear it documented so much now and talked about, but it's very different for somebody who identifies as a woman and lives in a world where there's a way women are viewed.
Yes. Okay.
Which for me is crass, because if you look at leaders in the world, CEOs and, you know, prime ministers and people who have leadership roles, just a sort of example too, you see a lot of women. You know, so the struggle to be able to be heard the same as what's afforded a man was definitely something that would be in the background in a lot of what presented itself in the foreground. You know, applying for jobs, for example. You know, it's ridiculous. You could have, you know, more qualified woman and a man, and they know they're up against it, and they know the remuneration or the salary probably wouldn't be the same, or the way they're going to be treated in the corporate world wouldn't be the same. That amount that you would have to overcome that a man wouldn't.
Can I just clarify? Sorry, are you saying this is how women view the world, or how it actually?
No, how the world views women.
How the world views women.
And by the way, I think it's a good thing you said there, Taylor, because unfortunately, when you live in a paradigm or a context with that's how you viewed, you have to adapt to it. So you either, as far as I could tell in my experience, become more determined, or you kind of just resign yourself to this the way it is and accept your lot, if you like. And by the way, I do want to qualify that this is not just with all women. It was just, over the period of time. And the people from all walks of life, like Taylor, you're a mum, for example, as soon as you say you're a mum, and as soon as Britt says she's like training to go to the Olympics as an equestrian, there's a different way you get related to, because that's just intrinsic in the culture.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, like Britt and I are both from very male-dominated industries as well. So I think there's something there that we've probably both experienced. I used to do finance, ran a business doing mortgage broking finance, and that was super male-dominated. It's gotten less over time, but you could definitely notice. And sometimes, in my experience, I found that clients would speak to me in a different way than what they would speak to a male counterpart as well, which was really interesting. So I can definitely I think I see that as well.
So I'll take a little bit of a risk here with you.
Okay.
If you just look at what is now out in the public domain that was maybe, and it's a big maybe, considered acceptable 10, 20 years ago, which I don't even know if it was really acceptable then, is now becoming really public about how totally unacceptable it is. And, I'm not going to talk about specific examples. You watch the news like everybody else, I'm sure, or whatever media outlet, so I don't even know if things were acceptable then, but I do know what has me speak about it the way I speak about it, right? Because I'm a man, right? Well, one of the really prominent people in my life that was a cornerstone for my values was my grandmother. She wasn't about fitting in or really about herself. She was about, there was a war and they were in an air raid shelter and they were on rationing, and her job for her, which was sacred to her, was to bring my father up safely and educate him. And she never changed, because when my father left this life, she took over 3 grandchildren, 6, 10, and 11, and never altered from that perspective. So from a young age, I got to see a human being operating that way. And as I got older, it became, oh yeah, that's my nan. That's a woman, While it wasn't registering so profoundly then, it was registering at some level. I'm married, I'll be 25 years married next year to the love of my life. Now, ask me to do what she does in bringing up our 2 children. I've tried it. I made a mistake. I'll tell one on myself. I made a mistake in my arrogance years ago, probably 15 years ago, maybe 13 years ago, of saying, it's terrible. I'm going to tell one of myself, what did you do with yourself all day? Yeah, I know, like, sort of sign your death sentence right there and then,
Yeah.
There I was, traveling around the world, away 2 weeks out of 3, probably home 5 days a month, all different time zones on a plane, jet lag. I didn't know if I had any because there were so many different time zones, forum to forum, la la la. And I come home and I go, I don't know what you do all day. Do you just go to school and chat with the mums after you finish, like for an hour and then come home and have coffee and la la la. I know. And I do really recognize how arrogant and how blind I was, but I said it, right? So she said, okay, well, why don't we do something? Why don't we, for the next 5 days, hand over running the house to you and just see? Okay. I was like, yeah, hey, I can lead the forum in Thailand to 547 people in another language translated. What's the big deal? Okay. By 5 o'clock that day, I got the first day, I got a stick and I got a white piece of sheet and tied it to it, and I went in. I came into the living area waving it, the surrender flag. And she just laughed, and I really did discover for myself that I'm an idiot and I'm disconnected with what it takes to be a mother. And thankfully, she gave me the opportunity to find out rather than being, annoyed with me or just sucking it up. So it altered my relationship with mums. It altered my relationship really with women. And I had to own I was pretty arrogant about something, and it leveled me in a very powerful way.
That's great. That's a great way to do it, I think. Experiencing it rather than talking.
Yeah, I mean, it was just full on all day. It was like the washing was relentless. And as soon as you thought about the washing was done, there was like, okay, what are you going to cook for dinner for the kids? And then there was hanging the washing out, and then another load of washing had to go on. I was like, where does all this washing come from?
Oh, I say that every day. Like, seriously, can't be wearing this many clothes.
I actually had an experience with my partner, like something similar. I took my daughter to Melbourne, and he had like 4 days at home by himself, which is all, working still, but at home. And he was doing the washing, and he goes, and I kept telling him, I said, you really have a lot of washing compared to the rest of us. Like, it's really noticeable how many clothes we have to wash for you out of everyone else. He's like, oh, whatever. So he goes away, calls me, he's like, oh, yeah, I got what you're saying, and I'm going to do better. And I was like, thank you. So, rather than me telling him, he got to see because he had to do his own washing. So it was great. Yeah. And now my washing is like halved. Love it.
Yeah. It was a very powerful experience for me, because I'd go away on the road and take my washing down to the laundrette, give it to somebody there, pick it up, fold it all up, stick it in my case, come home, So it gave me a real appreciation for my wife. And it also opened up my eyes to an aspect of life that they were closed to, that has altered the way I see women, people, but women, because we talked about women here.
Something, Paul, that opened up for me when you started to answer this question, because I noticed my brain just straight away wanted to not believe what you were saying. And then, pardon?
Which part did your brain?
It was that it didn't want to believe that, like, the world that views women that way, because, and then I was getting present to my view, which I had quite a masculine mum. She, did all the roles in the house. I worked in a male-dominated industry for 12 years, and I got myself present to, I still operate with or inside of that view that the world has of women, because I grew up with and like those masculine role models and masculine industry. So I'm actually becoming aware right now through this conversation of that more often than not, I probably still view women in the way that the world is by and large viewing women. And then what I'm taking on after this is to go, well, how am I like actually stopping and going, how am I carrying on thinking that women aren't viewed that way, but in reality they are? And then what is there for me to be responsible for about what I want to achieve in life? And it's it's quite, really profound for me. Like you probably see it's just like kind of happening right now. Because I carry on like in life, like, oh, like women aren't, like people don't view women that way, or, it's just up to because it's just up to a woman to deal with that, make yourself heard, or like, and that's, I can also see a little bit of where it's holding me back, and there'll be a lot more I'd see about that.
Right. Britt, do you mind if I just speak to something that you said there?
Go.
First of all, I'm very kind of aware of that this conversation could be a little bit one-sided. Oops. Something happened with the camera there. All sorts of wonderful things are coming up on my screen now. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. We can see you and hear you.
You don't have to get thwarted by technology. Britt, let me just say something. By the way, I'm sorry about the camera. I don't know what happened there, but that's technology, so we'll work with it. I don't want the conversation to be sort of viewed by people, women and men, like it's too one-sided. First of all, it's not one size fits all. It's more prevalent, you can see, in certain cultures around the world and less prevalent in other cultures. And a lot of work is being done, to address everything. But we do have things to deal with in society that, I don't know if people like to kind of really talk about, but, it's interesting for me when you get into kind of the facts that domestic violence in Queensland has shifted from men to women, women to men.
When you say that, the perpetrators of it?
Yeah, well, I don't like the word perpetrators because, you've got two human beings that have got something going on there that's getting expressed a particular way inappropriately.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's always a bit risky talking about it. But, if you look at the data and the facts, but then, there's been a rise in domestic violence with teenagers towards parents. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's my point about this? Well, there's something here in society, like I could have easily gone down a route of being a violent person because I was so angry with the world. So angry that the world could turn its back on someone I adored. So fortunately, I had an opportunity to really resolve that for myself in the forum, as we talked about. So, whatever I say is not the truth. Now, do I have something to say about it? Sure, working with 100,000 people. But one thing I do know is people are brilliant for me. Regardless of what life you've had, regardless of how you've been brought up, and I've had both ends of the scale, that I've been privileged to work with. For me, people are brilliant. I'm just flat-footed about that. You can't dissuade me from that. I don't care what you say about it. I don't care how much money you offer me. I don't care, whatever incentive you have for me to be dissuaded. I'm not going to be dissuaded. Now, are people brilliant for themselves? No. Now that I can say, and I can make that assertion, and I've got obviously evidence for it, in myself included. Mm-hmm. So therefore you can't be highly productive if you're not being brilliant. You can be productive to some level. And I'm sure, both you and people listening to this podcast might sit there and go, well, I'm doing pretty well in my life. Okay. Yeah, you're doing pretty well. But it's not what's really possible. It's not all of it.
Yeah.
Now, that takes a lot of courage for people to kind of go, you're right. Because it's way easier to be kind of defensive, like, what do you know about me? I'm like, an MD. Yeah. But, how's your well-being going? And how's your work-life balance going? And what's it like working under all that stress? Or I'm a mum, I don't work. Yeah, but you're a brilliant mum. But how's it going in your relationship? Is your partner getting as much time? Do you get what you need? Is there a wholeness? Anyway, you got the point, I think. Yeah. So, it was definitely I've seen in my programs how it is for people, and some men, some women, and obviously other genders that you identify with. So why did I bring that up? Because for me, while I've repositioned myself and I'm no longer a forum leader, and that time I had with Landmark was such a critical part of my life. I mean, it was 25 years of my 40-year working life. And I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity I had, for the people I worked with who are equally dedicated and committed to people the way I was, and everything came with it. Nothing's changed for me, even though I've repositioned myself now, as someone who is engendering leadership with people and able to coach people in, business owners, executives, people really that are committed to high performance. Nothing has changed about that for me, because with every one of my clients, they're brilliant for me. They just are. And I'm able, part of the training I got, which is really profound, is to be able to hear what it is that's stopping people from being highly productive. And I don't really need to do anything about that. It's just that I can let people communicate with me anything they want and hear what's there lurking in the background. It's just one of those skill sets that forum leaders are trained relentlessly in until it's just you. It's as natural as breathing air.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, nothing's changed for me. And, people are extraordinary. Once that gets unconcealed, they're brilliant and being highly productive. And that really fulfills me, That really is very much an essence of who I am.
Yeah. And thank you so much for going down that path, because that was going to be one of the questions we asked you. It was like, what are you up to now? Which is there anything else you want to say about that? Because we've got 5 minutes left. I know there was a question that Taylor had, but
no, I don't have anything more to say about that. I just wanted to be kind of sensitive to the fact that there's men listening to the podcast as well as women, and there's things for men that's very, very difficult, to deal with. But if one thing is for men and women, when you have children, that dynamic changes significantly. Let me just say this one thing if I can. So how come next year will be 25 years being married to the love of my life? She's still the love of my life, right? So this is kind of radical, and it's just what I created. So, people go, nah, keep that yourself, or you can have it, right? Yeah. But she came first. I met my wife. We were living together within 3 weeks. We were married within a year. Okay. She was the one. And somehow I was the one, right? So, but she came first and the children came afterwards. And I could see a path I was going down where the children became more important than her. And they're not. And I told them. I made it clear to them when they were at an age where they could understand it. Charlotte and Nathan, your mum came first. She's the most important person in my life. Now, I can hear over there where you are, Taylor, and I can sense, I can hear out there with people listening to it. It's like, what? Yeah, it doesn't mean they're not important, but they got life from her. They don't have anything without that. I mean, I got life from my mum. I don't have anything without that, rather. So, that's kind of a very sacred place where I created that in my family, that they are important. I will die for my children, sure, but it's not at the expense of my relationship with my wife being toned down because there are kids now. No. So.
Wow.
I like it.
It's radical, isn't it?
Yeah. Profound.
Yeah.
Radical. Yeah.
And people are going to have opinions about it, I'm sure, of course, and they're welcome to have it. And like I said, it really works for me. But that is why she is still the love of my life. We have challenges to deal with, but she's the most important person in my life.
Wow.
That's awesome. It's really fun.
Anyway, you had a question for me, Taylor, and I'm mindful of the time, and I'm hopefully this is camera working over here. I hope it does.
It does. You look great.
Yeah.
My question was, what advice can you give to parents to create a child who's empowered and happy?
Yeah. Okay. Whew. All right. So.
Big question.
Let me see. Let me take it out of the domain of advice, and I'm going to offer you what I have discovered for myself that has made a massive difference, and then people can do what they like with it.
Awesome, thank you.
Because Taylor and Brett, I'm not into advice. I think it's useless, personally. Hey, here's some good advice. Go down the gym. Drink less wine. Hey, don't argue with your partner. How useful is that?
Not very useful.
It's totally unuseful because everybody knows they should go down the gym, but they don't, or people don't, or I should drink less, or I shouldn't argue with my partner, or I shouldn't hold on to resentments. But that's advice. See, I'm more about, well, I'll share, and then it may open something up for you. And if I worked with you, you'd present something to me about what you're dealing with, and you can fully communicate it to me. And in the process, you'll hear something in the background that you couldn't hear before. And then we can start looking at what actions you're going to take to really perform in that area. It's very simple, very powerful. So back to your question. Communication.
Okay.
I created with my children, with my wife, as a family, that no matter what you do, no matter how bad it is, no matter how embarrassed you are, no matter how sad you are, because those are the times mostly when people don't want to communicate. You can say anything to me and your mum. You can. And, my son's 17 and he ended up vaping recently, a couple of months back, and sat on it for 48 hours to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore because he knew he could communicate it to us. And he sat there, and it took something for him to communicate it because he was embarrassed. And he said, look, I've been vaping and I want to stop. I don't know how. And it gave me the opportunity to spend a week with him, shoulder to shoulder and side by side, to walk him through it with his mum on the other shoulder. So communication is the mainstay, the bedrock of our family unit, with our children, to us, with each other, me with Kerry with me, you know. That's what I've discovered. I couldn't imagine being married and not really communicating. And, you know, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Everything.
You know, it's everything. But you work it out in communication. Like, you've got to give something up sometimes, a point of view about something. You've got to be willing to listen to the other person's point of view, experience what Nathan's world was like, of how embarrassed he felt, how difficult it was for him to bring that to us, appreciate the courage it took, acknowledge him for that, you know, and then, do you want me to support you with it? Do you want to vape? You don't. Okay, so how can I support you?
That's awesome.
And if we had time, I could share similarly about Charlotte. You know, it's not just because he's a boy with his dad, you know. So real communication, authentic communication, and being willing to give up something, you know, some point of view maybe you've got, that your point of view is more important than somebody else's.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. That's really powerful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Right. Oh, Britt, did you want to ask? Do we want to?
No. I think, should we just ask Paul, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah. Well, let's be clear, you know, I'm not doing advice and stuff like that.
No, but to work with you.
Yeah, to work with me, you know, I love working with my clients, and I love working with people who, you know, they're going to settle for okay. You know, so, oh, by the way, I just want to say something about that. Can I? Is that okay?
Of course, go for it.
So, in my life experience, I've run across people who are coaches where they have these strategies. You know, they have a strategic approach to things, or they've got some particular formula for things. I don't do that. And I'm not bagging people who do it. That's up to them. It's just not what I do. Mine's all about being with the person and what's being presented, and hearing what there is to hear that would really make a difference to that person's performance. And that's all I care about, is them being brilliant and performing. So if people want to talk to me about, you know, what I do and how it could be of value to them, I'm definitely open to that. And I'm on LinkedIn, Paul Berry. And if you typed in LinkedIn and it's Paul Berry AU, I've made it easy for everybody. Or you go to Facebook and you type that in, and Paul Berry AU. Yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. You know, again, Instagram, Paul Berry AU. And there's also my email, which is paulberryconsulting@outlook.com. But, you know, I don't know if people will be able to, you'll post it for them.
Yes. It'll be in the show notes, so of this episode, and wherever you're listening to the podcast, you know, whether it's Apple or Spotify or the many other hosting platforms. Yeah, definitely.
We'll have it all in the show notes, how to contact you.
You know, the other thing, I'm very moved actually to have this opportunity to be able to be with you. And I think for myself, Taylor and Brett, you know, what you asked of me today, I couldn't have scripted. You know, it was very much on the core, and I really loved what you presented and the way I was able to kind of really think about it and look and share. You know, nothing I said is really the truth. You know, I think the only truth out there is you're going to pay taxes. No, that's a bit of a joke, but nothing I'm saying is the truth. You know, I think once you've got something as a truth, it closes things down. It's just, we're in a conversation and we're talking about particular things. And these are things I've discovered. These are things I've implemented that work. And if it works for people, that's great. This is the kind of person I am. And if you want to work with me, this kind of person you'll be working with, you know. And if it doesn't, look, just thanks for obviously giving it some airtime. Nothing I'm saying is true, right, or any of that. But the other thing I was going to say is, look, I've been really moved about this opportunity to be with you. And I'm going to say something, in the kind of spirit of this festive season and a new year, people being able to go into 2025, not without New Year's resolutions, because that's all about being resolute. You've got to be firm. You've got to prevail. You've got to fix and change something. That's like the definition of being a resolution is that. It's all about creating extraordinary brilliance and possibility. So if people listen to this podcast and they want to talk to me and do become a client, I'm going to discount my usual rate. I just think I want people to be brilliant. And then they can talk to me and I'll tell them and
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. That's a really great offer.
Yeah, Thank you, Paul. That's really generous. And I really do hope people take up that opportunity. You're an extraordinary human being and who you are for people. And thank you so much.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. I'm deeply appreciative and moved to have had this opportunity to be with you.
Yeah, me too. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we could talk all day. So thank you again, Paul, for your time, your insights. It's been an amazing conversation that I can't wait to air with our listeners. And for our listeners, we are on all socials, so make sure to check us out. There'll be reels coming up soon with all of this on there. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.